Welcome to Holy Ground Hot Takes, where three travelers on the journey discuss the Lenten Scriptures together, looking at all things faith, life, and ministry related. Join us each week as we break open the Scriptures so that you can too.
Welcome to our second week with Hot Takes, Walking on Holy Ground. I'm Karen Luke at St. Catherine's, and here with me is Ann Gallagher and Vicki Waco from Church of the Transfiguration. Hey, ladies.
Hey, Karen.
So the second week of Lent, we are talking about God's covenant with Abraham and our mountaintop moments. So is there anything that, some hot takes that we want our parishioners to know before coming to Mass about this weekend's Mass or this weekend's readings?
Well, it's also Transfiguration Sunday. So for our parish, that's always kind of a big deal.
Cool.
Even though it's not our feast day, we get to hear our story today. So we love that. And you know, that line from the Transfiguration story is our parish motto, Lord, how good it is for us to be here. So it's one of the things I just love so much about our parish. And at the same time, I'm always like, well, what does that line really mean in the context of that story? Right? Because we've got these two, both with Abram in the first reading and then with Peter, James, and John in the gospel reading. We've got these mountaintop moments where people are having like a summit faith experience, right? Where they have a visceral kind of felt experience of God's grace. And they just know that God is close to them, right? A spiritual high point. And you gotta love Peter in his enthusiasm and cluelessness, right? Of course, he's like, let's set some tents up. One for me and one for you and one for Elijah, right? And like, God love him, but like, we're not meant to stay on the mountain forever, right? Like, it's good to be on the mountain, but God gives you the mountain so that you have those graces to carry with you, like into the valley and into the desert and all the places that God calls us to walk in our lives. So that's always kind of a blessing and a challenge about this reading for me, working at Transfiguration all these years.
That's cool. It kind of reminds me of a story that I heard on Facebook, and it was about this woman complaining how the men always get to go up to the mountain and hear God, and how the women always have all these tasks and stuff that they need to do. And at the very end of it, it says, but God has always come to the women where they're at. Mm-hmm. And, just talking about being on holy ground, and we all meet God where we are, and God always meets us where we are. So that's awesome. I'm really looking forward, now that we're sharing, to be a part of the Transfiguration experience this weekend. Vicki, what would you like to share with us?
I kept being really drawn to the first reading, and I think that idea, like Abram is promised this beautiful thing, right? This covenant with God. He's this beautiful understanding of this promised land. But we all know, like, it took him a while. And like, there were lots of bumps in the road for Abraham and Sarah and on this major journey in their lives. And that idea sometimes that, that vision sometimes is what sustains us through the hard points. Especially in the past few years, the visions of the things that can be again, if we just get through this, are sometimes the things that keep fueling me to keep going. And I feel like sometimes, especially when you come down those mountaintop experiences, it's so easy to get easily discouraged again. But like remembering the truth, remembering that promise that is going to sustain you long term to get to there finally. And, sometimes that's harder than it looks, especially when we're in life and life is messy and there's always issues that can come up.
You guys, I know that you all are aware of this experience, but coming back from like the National Youth Convention, you're like, yeah, let's go, let's do this. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's the real world. Not everyone experienced this with me, but you still want to share it.
Right. Yeah, so sometimes what you receive up on the mountain, either it doesn't translate to the people in your life you want to understand it, or like it's a promise, like you said, Vicki, that takes a long time to come to fulfillment. Or like with the disciples up with Jesus at the Transfiguration, it was a vision of the transfigured Christ, of his true identity, but they didn't have a context for what that would mean. They just had to live into that, probably over years to understand what that moment gave them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lots to think about this week.
It does. Yeah. The surrendering too. It's like we live in a world with instant gratification. I mean, we want to know something. We look on our phones. Well, we don't know when our promise is going to be fulfilled by God. It's not like we have a timer set on our phones. It's like, ding, ding, today's the day, so that surrendering of knowing that waiting period. And I think that's what's so great about Lent, is that it gives us a visual, a lived through experience of that waiting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Anything else for our friends at the churches before they come to Mass? Anything else on our mind? Any hot takes?
For me, maybe the question that we've been talking about holy ground, and how holy ground is whatever is under your heel. So, to ask ourselves the question, like, can we believe in God's promise, and can we believe that we are on holy ground, whether or not we're on the mountaintop or in the desert or in the valley? It's kind of
good.
Yeah.
Good food for thought for that week. Thank you. Or this week. I don't even know what week I'm in anymore.
None of us do. 40 years in the desert.
Yeah. Well, thank you, ladies. It was always fun chatting with you and hearing hot takes to prepare us for our continued Lenten journey on the second Sunday of Lent.
Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of Holy Ground Hot Takes. Make sure to subscribe to our channel, and of course, give us a big thumbs up if you enjoyed this episode.